Every Superman movie lives or dies by its Lex Luthor. Get him wrong, and your billion-dollar franchise becomes a meme. Get him right, and a man with zero powers becomes more terrifying than the god he's hunting. So why did one version turn Lex into internet comedy gold while the other makes audiences genuinely nervous? The answer reveals everything wrong with modern superhero writing and how to fix it. When you picture Lex Luthor, what do you see first? Mad scientist or ruthless CEO? That instinct explains almost everything. If you say scientist, you expect gadgets and grandstanding. If you say CEO, you expect a shark in a suit who makes everyone else do the moving while he stays perfectly still. The difference between those two pictures is the difference between a meme and a menace. Lex is terrifying when he wins without powers. He doesn't need a glowing rock or a monster pet to be scary. He needs a plan the audience can track, a frame that says he's in control, and a reason that burns on contact. The new portrayal understands that, and the film shoots it so we feel it. The camera lets us witness competence in real time. The performance lets silence do the bullying. The story points the knife at Superman's virtues instead of his face. Intelligence. You can actually see a villain's genius isn't what he says about himself, it's what the movie lets us watch him do. If a character keeps announcing he's brilliant while his schemes rely on luck, chaos, and the hero's mercy, he doesn't read as a mastermind. He reads as noise. That's why certain "look how smart I am" moves turned into memes. They were strange, loud, and ultimately empty. They didn't corner Superman, they just created distractions Superman cleaned up. Eisenberg's Lex had lines that sounded intellectual. "You're psychotic." That is a 3-syllable word for any thought too big for little minds. He acted superior, lecturing everyone from congresswomen to Lois Lane about Superman's danger. But fancy words don't equal demonstrated intelligence. His master plan was to manipulate Batman and Superman into fighting, hoping Batman could kill the Man of Steel. The backup? Create a monster by mixing his blood with Zod's corpse. Here's where the plan crumbles. Lex had no idea what kind of creature he was making. There was a real chance this thing could have kept Zod's memories and tried to kill its creator immediately. Remember, Zod's last act was attempting to wipe out humanity. Even if Lex somehow knew he was creating Doomsday, the plan was still catastrophically stupid. The moment Doomsday awakens, it tries to kill Lex. He only survives because Superman saves him. The same Superman who had already killed Zod and a terrorist. There was no guarantee Superman would protect someone who just kidnapped and tortured his mother. But the plan gets worse. Lex wanted Doomsday to kill Superman, but had no way to control what happened next. If Doomsday succeeded, what then? The monster doesn't take orders, absorbs nuclear attacks, and is stronger than Superman. The world's armies couldn't stop it. Other heroes like Flash or Aquaman wouldn't stand a chance. This could have worked if Lex had installed a kill switch, like Valentina did with Sentry. Still risky, but at least logical. Instead, we got plot holes masquerading as genius, a character who thinks he's smart but acts like an idiot. That works for Captain Boomerang, not Lex Luthor. Hoult's Lex doesn't just claim intelligence, he demonstrates it. From the start, he lays out a solid plan to destroy Superman's reputation. He clones the Man of Steel to create a controllable weapon, ensuring it has no independent mind. Unlike Doomsday, this clone functions as a tool that only answers to Lex, eliminating the risk of rebellion. More importantly, Lex explains he studied Superman's movements and powers for 3 full years. He knows everything Superman can do and developed 2,500 specific countermoves. Instead of depending on uncontrollable variables like Batman or monsters, this Lex uses pure intellect to defeat Superman. He memorized the patterns, runs the operation in real time, and executes something literally no one else on Earth could accomplish. But Lex's plan extends beyond personal vendetta. We discover he supported a Baravian invasion of a neighboring country, having already negotiated to claim half the conquered territory. When Superman and his team uncover this scheme, it doesn't feel like Lex sabotaged himself through incompetence. His downfall comes from a character flaw that makes sense. Ego-driven blindness that allowed an ex-girlfriend to photograph his secrets because he underestimated her as a threat. This aligns perfectly with comic book Luthor's arrogance. The character flaw feels earned, not forced. And if that's not enough proof of his genius, Lex literally creates a pocket universe without breaking a sweat. Even Mr. Terrific, one of Earth's smartest individuals, admits such a feat would be incredibly difficult and beyond his own capabilities. Meanwhile, Eisenberg's version can't even claim credit for building a successful company. He inherited it from Daddy. Presence. That commands room's intelligence means nothing if you can't sell a threat. Lex needs to feel dangerous standing across from Superman even without powers. Some artists draw him as a physical beast, others as refined and slender, but every effective version shares one trait: unshakable confidence. He must look more intimidating than Superman while being completely human. Eisenberg's Luthor was the opposite, a twitchy mix of Mark Zuckerberg and Jim Carrey's Riddler. He randomly yelled, jumped around, made strange noises, banged tables, stuttered, and talked to himself. His voice cracked constantly, and he cut himself off mid-sentence to suggest his brain moved faster than his mouth. This quirky, manic energy killed any sense of menace and clashed horribly with the movie's dark, serious tone. Worse, it destroyed his presence. When facing Superman, his hands shook, his voice broke, and he visibly cowered when Superman's eyes glowed red. At 5 feet 7 inches, Eisenberg stood over 4 inches shorter than Cavill, forcing the filmmakers to have Superman kneel during their confrontation to minimize the height difference. Even then, Eisenberg looked like a noodle next to Cavill's imposing frame. The character also struggled with public speaking, appearing nervous and socially awkward. In one scene, he nearly has a panic attack in front of a crowd. While Eisenberg excels at playing that type of role, it's completely wrong for Luthor. Lex should be charming and confident, able to manipulate anyone without breaking a sweat. Even if he views everyone as insects, he must make them believe he cares, feeding his ego through their admiration. Nicholas Hoult actually looks imposing, just like comic book Lex. At 6 feet 3 inches, he stands just 1 inch shorter than Cornswet, allowing them to go eye to eye without platform shoes or camera tricks. Their first confrontation works brilliantly. Superman bursts into Lex's office, they lock eyes, and when Lex stands, you see they're perfectly matched in height. Despite wearing no flashy costume, Lex still looks formidable. Hoult may not have done Cornsweet's intense gym workouts, but he's clearly in excellent shape. The tight suits showcase his physique, making him appear more like the all-star Superman version who could intimidate anyone through sheer presence. In that first meeting, his personality shines through superior composure. He doesn't stutter, hesitate, or fumble. He's not a child seeking approval, but a cold, calculating genius consumed by envy. While his girlfriend and assistant practically wet themselves when Superman arrives, Lex remains completely cool, telling Eve to start recording. He doesn't raise his voice or back down when Superman demands his dog back. He maintains perfect composure, even casually grabbing his coffee before Superman hurls his desk across the room. This behavior echoes the Lex from For All Seasons, a man with iron will who never cracks under pressure. This Lex genuinely believes he's superior to Superman, powers or not. Instead of panic attacks during public appearances, Hoult commands every room he enters. He talks circles around politicians and military leaders, convincing the entire world that Superman poses a serious threat. He remains steady when addressing the most powerful people in America and appears perfectly comfortable on live television. He even fakes fear after releasing Superman's message to the public, manipulating viewers' emotions. But for the audience who've seen his true nature, it's obviously an act. He's not scared. He's a master manipulator playing his role perfectly. When Lex's personality shifts in the second act after Superman escapes the Pocket Universe, we finally see him explode. But unlike Eisenberg's cringe-worthy meltdowns, Hoult's version remains threatening even in rage. He resembles the Luthor from Superman Birthright, losing composure while still projecting superiority. He deliberately throws a mug on the floor so staff must clean it up, asserting dominance even in defeat. Even at his worst moments, this Luthor feels genuinely menacing. Motivations that cut deep. In comics, Luthor and Superman represent opposing aspects of humanity. Superman embodies honesty, kindness, redemption, forgiveness, and hope, a symbol of growth and rising above our worst impulses. Luthor represents humanity's darkest traits: revenge, domination, humiliation, selfishness, extreme individualism, envy, and deep resentment. They're destined to clash because they're philosophical opposites. Luthor believes he's the peak of human potential, obsessed with a twisted concept of merit and success. Then Superman arrives, someone who can do the impossible effortlessly, simply because of different genetics. Worse, this alien receives the public adoration Lex desperately craves but can never truly earn, because people sense the monster beneath his surface. Eisenberg's Luthor drifted far from this concept. Sure, he wanted to destroy Superman's image and expose him as a false god, but his primary motivation stemmed from childhood trauma. His father beat him, he prayed for help that never came, so he concluded God was either powerless or evil for allowing suffering. Meeting Superman triggered this trauma because he saw a modern god who needed exposing. While potentially interesting for some DC villain, this motivation wasn't specifically about Superman. Lex could have targeted any metahuman, since many writers portray the Justice League as modern gods. It would have made more sense to target Wonder Woman, who's literally a god's daughter. Lex knows Diana exists but ignores her completely, creating a logical inconsistency. Hoult's Luthor aligns perfectly with comic book Lex. He attempts to make himself king of his own country, obsessed with power, wealth, control, and recognition. He explicitly states he wants universal admiration and gets offended when people compare him to historical figures like Galileo or Einstein, revealing his massive ego. He genuinely believes he's the most important person on Earth. Interestingly, nobody in the movie actually makes those comparisons aloud. Most likely, his employees stroke his ego while outsiders don't view him that way. Meanwhile, the world adores Superman, who simply smiles and saves people to win hearts. This drives Lex insane with jealousy because, in his twisted worldview, Superman makes regular humans appear weak and pathetic. Lex feels Superman has an unfair advantage. He sees himself as history's smartest person, but knows he'll never match Superman's speed or strength. This version believes killing Superman will help humanity achieve real progress without relying on aliens born with special powers. He thinks he's doing humanity a favor, but he's in love with the idea of humanity, not actual people. That's why he feels no guilt killing innocent people. Later, he declares all Superman supporters should die too, willing to sacrifice all of Metropolis for a chance at victory. Where Eisenberg's Luthor felt like a random villain who could fight any DC hero, Hoult's Lex is Superman's perfect nemesis, his complete philosophical opposite, just like in the comics. The technical execution beyond character work, the filmmaking itself, sells the threat differently. Hoult's Lex benefits from superior direction that understands how to frame menace. The camera holds on his stillness while others fidget. He controls space, staying seated while others stand, making subordinates cross distance to retrieve items he barely nudged. The room moves around him like planets orbiting a sun. Even wardrobe and props follow this philosophy. Simple watch faces instead of flashy jewelry. Invisible tailoring that's perfect because it's correct. Nothing squeaks or screams. The image communicates assumed power, not borrowed authority. The blocking reinforces his dominance. During confrontations, he maintains eye contact and lets silence hang until others fill it with nervous words. This turns every conversation into his instrument. The performance grants the camera a steady target, letting cuts hold just long enough to make audiences squirm. Compare this to Eisenberg's jittery energy that fought against the camera's attempts to build tension. When your villain can't stay still, the frame can't build dread. When he's constantly explaining himself, silence loses its power. When he appears physically overwhelmed by Superman's presence, the threat evaporates. The modern Edge Hoult's Lex also understands contemporary power dynamics. In our connected world, you don't need to break a hero's body if you can destroy their story. He seeds doubt, controls optics, and appears first on camera with empathy and solutions. He speaks softly about costs, while others show footage of collateral damage. This approach feels genuinely modern and terrifying. Legal, invisible, and effective. Colder than kryptonite because it works within systems Superman can't simply punch. You can't laser a budget hearing or heat vision a media narrative. When the story shows this web tightening, pressure multiplies without a single explosion. The supporting ecosystem sells this threat. Mercy isn't just muscle. She's an operator who can coordinate multiple operations while making each feel prioritized. Financial officers turn philanthropy into influence banking. Politicians become useful megaphones without seeing themselves as villains. They're professionals doing jobs in a city that needs order. That gray zone is where this Lex thrives. Why it matters. Maybe if Batman v Superman's Luthor hadn't been such a clown, that movie wouldn't have been so controversial, and the old DCU wouldn't have collapsed. It really had potential and started strong, but fundamental character failures cascaded into franchise-killing problems. The difference between these portrayals reveals everything about modern superhero writing. Audiences can smell fake intelligence and forced menace from orbit. After years of superhero fatigue, they demand craft over quirk, competence over chaos. When Nicholas Hoult's Lex Luthor walks into a room and somehow feels more dangerous than the alien god he's hunting, that's not accident. That's understanding the assignment. Don't reinvent Lex so much as clarify him. Keep the comic core DNA but translate it into modern power language. Corporate polish, media fluency, and silence that cuts. This is how you make a human feel inevitable against an alien. This is how you turn a meme back into a menace. And this is why, after years of waiting, we finally have a Lex Luthor who deserves to stand across from Superman. The quiet tyrant always wins over the obvious psycho. He's the one who makes you complicit without noticing, who wins debates you didn't know you were having, who turns your best qualities against you and makes you thank him while he does it. That's why this Lex lands, and why the other one never could.